you and I talked about KXL countless times on the show. Ultimately, the Obama administration turned down KXL North while, again, he fast-tracked KXL South. You recently wrote about a court ruling about Endbridge's Alberta Clipper, which you and I have talked about before. It's essentially a KXL clone. So tell us give us a little bit about the Alberta Clipper and what the court actually decided.
So the Alberta Clipper is a piece of what I've been calling the Keystone XL clone. It's the border crossing piece of it, and then other pieces that don't cross the U.S.-Canada border end up doing the same thing as Keystone XL was set out to do, and that is bring that tar sands oil down to the Gulf Coast. That's Keystone XL clone. That case was decided a little bit before the Paris Climate Summit, I believe, sometime in November, and it was the United States District Court in Minnesota. The court basically ruled that what the Obama administration did, somehow they agreed with the administration, and they agreed with the industry, and Endbridge in particular, that this was not an agency action in terms of, because the president did not go forward and issue a presidential permit, and apparently, according to the judge and according to Endbridge, even the State Department didn't act on this, even though they did. I had a whole article about how through emails and through different letters and stuff, they said yes to this piece that was approved behind closed doors, because they didn't actually sign a real piece of paper in an official way, at least the way that the judge determined it. It was ruled that it wasn't an agency action, and so there was no need to do a NEPA review, or National Environmental Policy Act review, which means there was no need for public comments, there was no need for public hearings, and the way it was done was okay according to that judge. And so because of that ruling, unless there was some kind of appeal and injunction issued in that appeal to stop it, that pipeline is moving forward. And it already exists, I should say. It was approved in August of 2009 by the Obama administration during congressional recess. This is an extension of that piece of pipeline. And so,
which is another way these oil companies get around a lot of this stuff. It's like once you kind of have the land down and it's supposed to have X amount of capacity, they end up like doubling and tripling it.
Exactly.
Really, really with like an easy rubber stamp.
Exactly. And so that is basically what that is. You actually summarize the whole story here, is that Endbridge had this thing already, and so it was there. It was convenient. All they had to do then was look in Canada and say, hey, we have this aging piece of pipeline, and so we need to, quote-unquote, upgrade it. And what they actually meant was create an entirely new pipeline infrastructure system that would feed even more tar sands oil through this pipeline called Line 3 that connects to Line 67. Does connect to the border, but somehow they were able to scheme it in such a way that they said, well, no, actually what we're doing is adding pressure pumps on both sides of the border, and therefore the State Department, even though they said it was okay, they didn't really go through that whole normal process, and it was all done through different emails and through some letters, but the public was never involved. They found out about it when it was published in the Federal Register. And so that's the whole base of this lawsuit, but the lawsuit didn't, as I said, the lawsuit ended the way that Endbridge would have wanted. That is, the judge agreed with their argument and the State Department's argument. So the groups who filed this lawsuit, Sierra Club, National Wildlife Federation, and others, said they may appeal it. And so that's something to watch for in 2016. But as of now, this thing is moving forward.
So what is the theoretical, compare the capacity with Endbridge and the other clone lines to what the KXL would have actually been? Are they pretty comparable? I mean, is it still? I mean, obviously KXL was going to be gigantic, but with this kind of expansion, is it similar in scale, or what are we actually looking for when it comes to keeping this dirty tar sands oil in the ground?
So unfortunately, it's pretty similar in scale. I mean, what I've been reading is that it seems like some pieces can carry more tar sands oil than others, the connector pieces, but I think that if you were to average it out and look at all those pieces and put it together, it ends up being about the same in terms of Keystone XL. So that is, I wouldn't have felt comfortable calling it a clone unless the amounts were similar and the things they did are similar, but I've come to realize that they are very similar to one another. The difference, of course, is that one is Endbridge, and Endbridge was smart enough in terms of their tactics to not try to do it all in one, but do it in multiple segments in different states and that sort of thing, kind of more under the radar. Whereas TransCanada, they probably made the mistake to go through that whole big process through the State Department, and they ultimately didn't get that northern leg. But they were smart enough to realize, well, we can still get the southern leg, not through this presidential permit process. And so they got an executive order and got permits from the different states that they needed. And so I think that looking to the future, I do think that if it can be avoided, companies are not going to go through the State Department cross-border permit process if they can avoid it.